Welcome back here to Nikon's Frame by Frame podcast at Xposure 2024. If you haven't popped down already, there's still today and tomorrow left, so make sure you come down to Sharjah's Xposure and visit the Nikon stand as well. There's plenty going on. You can take photos, test out all the gear. There's some great workshops going on, so make sure you pop down to Xposure 2024. This is the Frame by Frame podcast where we dive deep into some techniques and tips from renowned photographers and videographers from all around the world. Today I'm pleased to be joined by Andrew Smith, a experienced cinematographer from the UK, now based in the Middle East. So welcome, Andrew, to the Frame by Frame podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. First of all, Andrew, I want to talk about your journey in cinematography. I'm really curious about, I'm a photographer, so I don't have a lot of experience in cinematography, so I'm curious about how you started and how you ended up where you are at the moment.
Okay, well, essentially I'm a filmmaker rather than specifically a cinematographer, but I've worked throughout my career closely with cinematographers and as an independent videographer myself. But I started out around 25 years ago out of an interest for telling stories and movie making, watching behind the scenes on the TV and whatnot, and I put myself through education within that field: media studies, film studies, practical filmmaking. And essentially I started off in post-production, and it wasn't until later on that I went and done my MA at the London Film School that I got more into directing and script writing. But throughout that journey I've always worked closely with cameras one way or the other.
Okay, that's super interesting. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're doing photography or videography or cinematography. I guess the underlying essence of it all is visual storytelling, isn't it? So that's the biggest part of it.
Absolutely, it's all about storytelling. Stories are all around us. The whole world is made up of stories. We all have one. And being a competent filmmaker or photographer for that matter, because a still image tells a story just as a moving image. So being able to see the story in things is, I think, an absolute necessity for either a photographer or videographer or cinematographer.
Okay, and I guess the biggest challenge sometimes for, amateur photographers or in this case videographers is that difference between, candid and I guess directed videography as well. So what advice would you have for people in both those situations where they might be traveling around taking, candid videography but wanting to tell a story versus those that are truly directing their own story?
Well, I think in both cases you need to be aware of your surroundings, and it's good to do people watching if you're in the mall or in a cafe. It's good to pay attention to people and to situations, because it's being able to recognize and identify a true moment. That's what you're trying to capture. And they are happening all the time in life around us. Here at this, great Sharjah Expo here, Xposure, where it's all about photography and videography. There's all kinds of moments going on. We're sharing a moment right now, and if there were to be a videographer or photographer standing by, I'm sure they could capture great moments.
And is that a habit that you get into when you're just walking around, even when you don't have a camera in your hand? Just
Absolutely.
Envisioning different moments?
I live in a film. I see scenes play out all the time, and sometimes I take from them, sometimes I will jot them down as ideas.
That's so interesting. Your brain's constantly working in a film, and mine's constantly working in still images. So
I'm thinking in focal lengths as well.
Yeah, we're walking around the same event looking at
how would I photograph that? Would I use a 35? Would I use a 50? Would I use something longer? So, it becomes muscle memory when you've been in this type of field for so long that you're always looking for the image, for the moment, for the situation, whether you're a stills photographer or whether you're a videographer. And on that note, I think any cinematographer or videographer worth their weight in gold has a really solid foundation in stills photography.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's really good advice as well, just when you're walking around just in your daily life to think about things like, how could I capture this? What lens might I use? And for me, it's, I'm walking around looking at different light and, could I use this light? What's the light doing now? And then when you go to take your videos or your photos, it almost becomes, like you said, muscle memory or a habit, and you don't have to think about certain things anymore.
Yeah, to just go further into the latter part of your last question, when, something candid, so, the incidental, you're looking to capture the moments on the go, wherever you may find yourself. But when it's more directed, then you have an opportunity to choose the location, to choose the lighting, to choose the costume, the makeup, etc. In what we'd call in filmmaking, the mise en scène. Whatever you put in that frame, because every element of that frame can help you tell a story or can help you raise brand awareness or fit into a certain theme or create a certain vibe that either you're doing for a client or you're doing just for your own creative process. All these elements are storytelling tools.
So in that process, can you talk us through your workflow? If you receiving a brief from a client through to, are you someone that likes to mood board and storyboard and create those sort of visual images before you go in and do a shoot?
Absolutely. The devil's in the detail. I will always, in a sense, reverse engineer a project. So I'll think about the workflow from post rather than pre.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'll think about, so what does this project need in terms of post-production? How much time am I going to need in post-production to do it effectively? And then I will then approach my pre-production with them things in mind. I'll approach my script writing with them things in mind.
Interesting.
So the devil's in the detail. And even if, predominantly I'm talking about filmmaking here, but if I was to put it through the lens of a stills photographer and frame it that way, I'd still want to plan my day. I'd still want to schedule it a certain way. I'd still want to know what time of day I'm going to be shooting. I'd still want to know about the location. There's all types of logistics that need to be considered, whether you're doing, moving image or still image, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And when we're talking about videography with Nikon gears, they've really made, I guess, a giant leap with some of the new mirrorless cameras, and especially with the Z8, which is, I guess, their true hybrid camera. I guess previously with some of the DSLRs, one of the, very, very strong in photography, but I guess with the newer mirrorless cameras, they've caught up with the videography as well, and in the case of the Z8, really taken a leap forward with specifically videography. How have you found the Z8 and the mirrorless bodies?
Absolutely. I mean, I was at the launch not too long ago for the Z8, and Mr. Tarek from Nikon Middle East, he was kind enough to loan us a Z8 and some really nice prime lenses as well for our students at Rain Dance Film School in Dubai to actually have an experiment with and try out and try to shoot a couple of scenes. And the image is so crisp, and that kind of moving image in low light is a good dynamic range. So I think a lot of our students, especially the students that are more familiar within the industry and have used a lot of different brands in terms of photography and videography, they were a little bit surprised because Nikon are new to videography and that kind of race, but with the Z8, wow, I mean, it's up there competing with some of the best DSLRs within that price bracket.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know for me, with my travel photography, it's really pushed me to do a lot more videography now as well with the Z8, just with the quality that I can get from it. Whereas before I perhaps wasn't as passionate about it, but now I'm really sort of inspired to do. So that's what I want to pick your brain quite a bit today about my own videography as well. So,
well, absolutely. Just to go one step more with the Z8, like I said, some of our students were a little bit, okay, we're going to use a Nikon, let's try it out. But their hearts and minds have changed now, so they're asking to use the Z8 over other brands that we house in the school. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think they really have taken a huge leap forward with that camera, and it allows people to couple that body with some of the high quality lenses that they do have, which puts Nikon in a great position for videography moving forward. So that's good to hear. A lot of your work these days is with schools and education. Talk to me a little bit about that. What are you doing with the schools at the moment?
So I currently manage the Rain Dance Film School in Dubai, and there we offer a comprehensive script-to-screen curriculum, not only for filmmakers but also for actors, and them two pathways are bridged by studies in film history, visual storytelling and script writing. Again, we're big on storytelling. I'm a script writer myself, so at every level of our tuition and the roll out of our curriculum, storytelling, script writing is at its absolute heart. Okay,
amazing. So talking from a lot of the Nikon photographers that I talk to and that I know, a lot of them are still photographers but are now looking to do a lot more videography because we've got these amazing bodies and these great lenses. What would be your advice to someone like myself or some of the amateur photographers that are wanting to do a lot more photography? Would it be to start doing a little bit of, basic script writing and planning out their storytelling rather than just going out to take photos and seeing videography as something they can do on the side, but more prioritizing the videography?
So I think a basic exercise that I give to my students is to take some stills, but take 3 stills. Every story has something in common, and that's a start, middle, and end. Okay? So if you think as a start, middle, and end as 3 images, so the first image is the start of your story, second image is the middle, and the third is the concluding third part. The end, start, middle, and end, right? Chop that into 3 stills photos. Tell me a story in 3 images. Now, similarly, moving into the actual moving image, and the cameras are photographing reality at 25 frames per second or 30 frames per second, typically, depending on which part of the world you're in. You are often taking static shots, so your camera will be mounted on a tripod. Now, and the only thing that's happening is there's action moving within the frame. That's the difference between still photography, and you're taking 25 shots. Within 1 second. Don't get too hung up on the technicalities of what's going on. Don't be scared of the technology. You will already have an eye for composition through your stills photography taking, right? Then all you need to consider is the different lenses that you might be using, or you might be on a zoom lens where you're getting a wide, mid, and close. So similarly, if we break storytelling down in a visual way to a start, middle, and end, if you think of the start of your film as a wide shot on a shorter lens, maybe like a 50 maybe, or something smaller, you're setting the scene with that type of image, It's a wide. We're seeing the whole world with that image. But then in our second shot, we maybe want to introduce our characters, and we maybe want to put them in kind of portrait mode or something as a mid shot, where we are, say, at a 50. Right? So maybe our first shot, we're on a 20 or an 18 or something. Then we move in to show our characters on a 50, but then we want to move into, say, a 35 to show them characters, I don't know, writing a letter. So you have a wide, mid, and a close shot. Already you've told a story. You've took us from a world view, say a cityscape, into someone's office and the job they do, for example. So just start the building blocks in an easy way. Master your wides, mids, and close-ups first before you start considering your pans and your tilts and putting the camera on a gimbal or handheld.
Slow motion.
Start with the early building blocks.
It's really good. I mean, I'm just envisaging myself now walking around a market or something like that. Exactly what you're saying. Wide, mid. Mixing up those.
Traditionally in filmmaking, there was no tracking shots for a very long time.
Yeah.
From the birth of cinema, you know. I think it was a good 20 or 30 years before filmmakers started experimenting with tracking and handheld. Gimbals have only been around for the last 20 odd years, or steady cams even. I think the first steady cam shot was used by Stanley Kubrick for The Shining, or Paths of Glory, one of his earlier films. So, you know, technology is always changing, but stills photography is at the foundation of moving photography, or motion images, moving images. So, I'm a kind of traditionalist when it comes to filmmaking. So the majority of shots I'll take are on a tripod, and they're not moving at all.
Yeah, interesting. I guess one of the great things about Nikon cameras these days is it is making it a lot easier for us as well. We don't need to think so much about the tracking's in there. We've got the stabilization in the body, so we can concentrate more on what you're talking about, not worry so much about the focus, because it's got such good autofocus, it's got such good inbuilt stabilization, so we can move our attention to the creative side rather than having to worry so much about the technical side, because the camera's cheating a little bit for us compared to what it was maybe 10, 20 years ago. Again,
whether an image is stable or whether an image is shaking all over the place, as I mentioned before, within the mise-en-scène, within the frame, you're able to tell the story through costume, lighting, set design, etc. You're also able to tell the story through camera movements. So if I have a shot that's very smooth and slick, that's going to evoke a certain emotion in my audience. Whereas if I've got something that is very frenetic and shaky and handheld, that's going to create a different emotion. So if it's an action movie, are you going to take the smooth shot or the frenetic, moving shot? It's the frenetic one, because you're trying to create dynamism and a sense of action and urgency.
Amazing. And I mean, we've also got a lot of amazing videographers at Nikon as well. What would be one piece of advice you could give to someone that's already, I guess, an amateur or professional videographer to really take their skills to the next level?
I think a very easy answer for me to give, and a very practical one, is to watch films. Right? Really study what cinematographers are doing. Look at where the light is coming from. Look at what their camera is doing in terms of movement. Look at movement within the frame that obviously the director is given to the performers. Often, on film sets or on, obviously if you're a videographer, often you're a one-man band and you have to be the director yourself. But be aware of what movement does within a shot as well, whether that means someone walking from the background to the midground to the foreground, or vice versa. What effect does that have on the actual geography of the frame, and how does it make your framing more dynamic? So someone walking up and down towards frame, or someone walking from left to right across frame, has a very different feeling, and you create a very different type of geography if you have someone walking diagonally through the frame. Or is your shot capturing a scene from overhead rather than ground level? The position and the angle of your camera is also so important in telling stories. You don't always have to just be straight on. You can be cocked on a kind of Dutch angle or something like this, or you can be moving around your subjects.
And is that something you'll often play around with? So get people to walk from left to right, right to left, diagonal, and then look at it and choose which one works the best?
Absolutely. Given the time, especially if you're making drama or a short film or something like this, give yourself enough rehearsal time to experiment. And if you haven't got the actors there that day, bring in other friends or crew or whatever and get them. We call it blocking. So you will block a scene and have someone stand in a particular position or whatnot, because if someone's in dialogue with one another, you don't want somebody's head to be covering the face of the other person. So you need to work out correct blocking positions for your actors, and even for interviewees. You know, if you're interviewing two people like us two sat here, you know, the cameras that are covering us are positioned in a certain way to get the best conventional coverage. You know, so
One of the big challenges I have with videography, I love shooting a lot of video, but it's the post-processing and editing. Which is why I was really interested when you said you started with post-processing. What's some advice you'd give to someone like me that really struggles on the post-processing side of it?
I think it's good to have an idea and a clear understanding of what it is you're trying to capture. And that will come from the audience you're wanting it to present it to. Is it just for you, or is it for a client, or is it for an audience? And understanding them things gives you a clearer idea of how to approach it, right? Because a lot of students, a lot of videographers will just shoot hours of footage, and then it puts extra time on their post-production then. And you don't want that, because post-production is expensive. It's expensive to hire an edit suite, or, you know, it's time consuming if you're someone that's cutting at home or what have you on whatever software you're using. So how you become more economical is by creating a shot list. So if you're doing a wedding, for example, or some kind of event, so you again go back to this idea of storytelling in 3 stages. Okay, I need to establish the scene. I need a wide shot of the events of the Expo, you know, the Expo Center or whatever it is. Then I need some mid shots of the people that I'm focusing on. Then I need some close-ups of them, you know, and that's your B-roll. If you can go through your B-roll, if you will, and when I say B-roll, I mean kind of the atmospheric shots, trying to get a flavor of the situation that you find yourself working in. If you can cover it in multiples of wides, mid shots and close-ups, you've got it. And then obviously your interviews, which are often, you know, coupled into, say, a promo or a documentary type project, then you want to compose really nice kind of interview shots, whether that's a head and shoulders or something a bit wider, or again, go in closer. But again, use them principles of the 3 steps, and generally they are wide, mids and close-ups. You can go further with extreme close-ups, etc., which are always good for getting the audience closer to the subject, whether it be an action that's happening or someone that's speaking. The closer the camera is, or the closer, the bigger the image is for the audience, the more emotionally invested they come with your story. Because otherwise you're always holding them at arm's length, and they feel distant from the story that way.
100%. Well, guys, I don't know if you are, but I'm really learning a lot from this that I'm going to take home and put into my own videography. So thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us at Face to Face. It's been an amazing chat with you. And join us again soon, guys. We've got a lot more podcasts to get into, so don't go away. Or come down to Xposure 2024 and join us live and listen in. So thank you again, Andrew, for such a great session.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.